Story 1. Not learning more about my parents when they were young. My father was run off the road by a drunk truck driver, and my mother lost the fight against cancer. Story 2. Not being more present in high school. Not that I am saying I miss it and want to go back. I would rather die, but I missed some good things by just not being present mentally. Story 3. I am sitting here thinking of my biggest regrets and realizing how petty they are and that I am actually just happy-go-lucky with a decent life. I regret eating that much pizza a few hours ago, but the regret will pass. Story 4. Content warning for abuse and violence. When I was a teenager, I had a good friend who was in a very bad household. We would talk about mutual experiences, and he would tell me about the things his dad did to him. Several times I almost reported it, but he would always beg me not to, and I would always listen. One night, he told me about a particularly bad incident, but once again asked me not to report it. His dad beat him to death that night. Yeah, it's not my fault and all that. I've heard everything of the sort. Still haven't been able to love myself since. Story 5. Letting myself get so fat. I was never really taught proper nutrition, nor was it enforced as a child. Now I'm an adult with very low self-control when it comes to eating, and that lack of discipline spills over into other aspects of my life. It's a never-ending work in progress, but I'm taking things one day at a time and trying to continually reinforce good habits. Story 6. I was 12 the day my mom passed away. I was in a hurry to go to my brother's, and we tried to get her to go to the hospital. 12-year-old me tried to get her to go. I feel though if I had stayed home, I could have called 911 and she would still be here. 13 years later, it still feels awful. Story 7. Smoking weed. It is not for everyone. It completely obliterated any ambition I had coming out of high school and kept me subdued from college through my 30s. I know I could have accomplished so much more without it. Story 8. Spending so many years binge drinking like a college kid. Going on 7 years sober and don't miss it at all. I guess I thought I would have no life, but the opposite happened. I took up many hobbies that I love, running, fishing, hiking, just to name a few. Story 9. Picking up smoking cigarettes. It's the one thing I just can't go without. Sense of smell is pretty much gone. Taste isn't as strong as it was. And it's pretty expensive. I smoke Newports, which are on average $6.50 a pack. Pack a day, that's close to $200 a month. For what? Decreased senses. Increased chances of serious health problems. Smoking is a bitch. Story 10. Wasting time on a cheater is way up there. You can't get your time back, and people that cheat on you are absolutely not worthy of the one resource you can never buy more of at any price. My other regret is not following through with education as far as I could. It's much easier in today's time to find any job with more education. It's not that you can't get good jobs or build your own empire, but you'd be looking for the jobs that you can get versus the jobs you think you want. To be clear, neither of these things torpedoed my life. The biggest mistake that can be made is to not learn from something. The fact that we can even regret something means there's a good chance it wasn't a total waste. Story 11. Letting my one true love get away. We had so much in common and our souls truly match, but I was too afraid and didn't believe I was worthy of her love. Story 12. Not living life on my own terms when I was younger. Not rebelling or going through any of those milestones of self-discovery as a teenager. Now, I don't even know who I am or what I want to do, just a useless old person who can't adult. Story 13. Not getting healthy sooner. At the young age of 42, I lost 68 pounds, started running marathons, radically changed my diet for the better, quit a high-stress job, started sleeping right, quit caffeine, still do decaf though, laid off the sodas, quit dumping table salt on every plate of food, started growing most of my own food, and quit smoking. Currently 53 and wondering why I waited so long to start feeling good again. Story 14. Not sending my dog to the veterinarian. He was really sick, but my family and I figured he would recover if we gave him medication and helped him out because it worked before. If he didn't get better, we would take him to the veterinarian the next day. I found his lifeless body that night. Story 15. Getting a smartphone. My attention span is non-existent. I know I have a problem, but I have such little energy to change anything, and the circumstances around my life actively make it more difficult to escape the cycle of vice. It's given me a lot more empathy for drug addicts. I'm taking things one day at a time, trying to put together a normal life, but it would be so much easier if I'd never gotten hooked on that instant dopamine. Story 16. Biggest regret? Probably not buying Bitcoin back when it was the price of a cup of coffee. Every time I hear about how much it's worth now, a tiny piece of my soul dies. If I had known, I would have been the world's first crypto barista, serving up lattes and loading up on Bitcoin. But hindsight is 20/20, right? Story 17. I never met my biological father. I had the opportunity to travel to meet him, but it felt like there was no effort on his part, so I did not go. He was killed in a vehicle crash, and I never got the chance. Story 18. I regret getting married the first time when I was 18 and having to go to the army, thinking I could have supported my kids. Plus, going to war for Desert Storm for oil was stupid. I would still be working and enjoying life instead of being made unemployable by the Department of Veterans Affairs for depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, and alcoholism anxiety. I'm on my second marriage and failing at being a husband and father. Story 19. I wish I had asked my grandparents more questions, that is, learned more about their lives from them. I did not fully appreciate what interesting lives they had lived until after they passed and helped sort through their belongings. Story 20. Money lost gambling. Not even like massive amounts, but like $500 could have been spent doing something fun with my wife, but instead it's just gone. I've hence quit, but damn, that's like plane tickets or a road trip or nice dinners, all gone for nothing, literally nothing. Story 21. My marriage ending, how I was in the build-up to it and crawling into a bottle after. When I'm in one of my darker headspaces, it bothers me that my suicide attempt failed. Story 22. Failing out of college and taking a job that paid decently at a plant nearby just because I wanted money to do stuff. Nothing bad, just wanted to travel and rent a house, get a dog, etc. The money was great, and I did those things, but it delayed my overall life goals and ability to grow a career by 2 years since I don't have a degree. I'm back in school now and loving it. Sometimes you end up taking the scenic route in life. This is one I wish I could take back. Story 23. I did not take my dog to the veterinarian in time. She had diabetes and passed away. I think about this mistake every day of my life. I miss her sweet face so much. Love you, Jazzy. Story 24. My father was emotionally abusive to me and my mother for my entire life. I used to go to sleep wishing that he would beat me so that I could show up to school with bruises, and then maybe someone would call Child Protective Services. My mother was financially trapped in the marriage, but she did everything she could to protect me from him as much as possible. The other reason she didn't divorce him was because sharing custody and having me cared for only by him 50% of the time would have been horrible for me. She really did want to protect me. But one time she couldn't be there. It was Father's Day weekend. She was at a concert with her cousin, and I was in a hotel on the coast on a mini daddy-daughter vacation. It had been going fine, I thought, but something snapped in him that second night and he raised his voice and didn't stop. Time warps in events like these, but I must have endured at least 30 minutes of non-stop verbal abuse. I had scratched off the top layer of skin on my forearm, trying to keep it together, trying not to fully break down, and eventually he went to bed. I often lie awake at night wondering what would have happened if I hadn't kept my composure. If I just let go and sobbed and wailed and been inconsolable no matter how much he implored me to be quiet. I wonder if he would have snapped out of it and realized what he had done. I wonder if someone in that same hotel would have called the police having heard a man yelling and a kid screaming and crying. I wonder how a police officer would react to my red-faced father with an inconsolable, crying, self-mutilating child on the couch in his hotel room. I wonder if that would have created a trail of evidence that could have enabled my mother to divorce him for full custody. I wonder if my life would be different now if I'd have gotten away from him. Story 25. There are so many, but then most would mean that I haven't ended up here, and I really like where my life is right now. Except missing out on buying Bitcoin for $1. Story 26. I'm doing it now. Realizing that there are things about your life that you want to change, being fully capable of that change, and not doing anything about it is awful. Story 27. In 2011, I decided to move from Austin to Los Angeles to try my hand at screenwriting. I gave myself a 3-month window to save up and sell off everything that wouldn't fit in my car, and during those 3 months, I met a girl. I told her about my decision to move right from the start, but she said she didn't care. We had a great time during those 3 months, probably the best time I'd had with another person, but I stuck to my decision and moved anyway, chasing the dream and all that. Not long after I left, she got together with my old manager. Now they're married and have a kid. Los Angeles didn't work out at all. Story 28. Not seeing my dad before he left for the hospital. He wasn't feeling well and decided to go to the emergency room. Something kept telling me to run down the stairs to see him, but I didn't. He never came home. Literally the last day I laid my eyes on him was on my birthday. Story 29. Spent my most formidable years, 12 to 18, on hard drugs. Realizing now at 36 the substantial toll it has taken on me both psychologically and socially. I have quit everything hard, just recreational marijuana now, but I really truly wasted my younger years and so much potential, and it breaks my heart because I will never get those years back, and it starts to really show and sink in hard when you get about my age. Story 30. Not trying in high school. Virtual classes during COVID-19 affected my ability to learn, but I still could have tried harder to achieve my potential. Now I am starting from the ground up in community college. It's going better now, but still an uphill battle compared to what could have been. Story 31. Not going to art school. I took the so-called smart path and went into engineering. Now I have graduated with honors in industrial engineering, and guess what? Nobody will hire me because I do not have enough experience. Well, now I cannot get experience because I do not have experience, and I do not have experience because I cannot get experience. Story 32. Not recognizing my anxiety for what it was and not getting treatment. When I would get anxious about stuff and sometimes let that stop me, I thought I was just weak and lazy. I didn't realize that it was actually anxiety I could maybe get treatment for. I missed out on what would have been a much earlier start to my career, which never got off the ground had I not succumbed to anxiety. Story 33. Not believing in myself in my early 20s. I didn't think I was good enough to study computers and work with them, so I worked in bad jobs and landed in an undesirable profession. I'm glad I met my wife and turned my life around. I'm not a developer or in coding, but I learned networking, and I work in information technology. I'm the happiest I've ever been in my job, and I have an actual career and career goals. Story 34. Not leaving toxic relationships when I should have. And why? Leftover mental and emotional trauma. I've healed a lot, but things still come up and leave me questioning myself and wondering if I can even trust the decisions I make now. Story 35. When asked to play bagpipes for a friend's funeral by his family, I declined because I was studying for university exams. I would have only lost 1 day of study, and in hindsight, it would not have made any difference to the outcome of those tests. I'm sorry, Tom. Rest in peace. Story 36. I reported the times I was sexually molested to the police, especially the one that occurred in the city where I still live because it destroyed my life and made everything a lot worse. I get re-traumatized regularly by people talking about it as if I had made it up, and there is no way out. It led to several suicide attempts, and despite surviving now, I am not really sure those were the last. Story 37. Holding myself to the standards other people set for me without knowing my limitations. Learning to give yourself grace when you have chronic conditions or disabilities will save your sanity. Story 38. A few years ago, I was in an elevator on the Salty Dog cruise when a woman behind me said to her friend, "I wait all year for this cruise. It's the only time I can be myself." To this day, it makes me so sad that I didn't turn around and give her a hug. Story 39. Messed up one of the best relationships I had by being immature and taking him for granted. I'll never get to see him or hear from him again, and he was the love of my life for 3 years. I'll never know what happens to him or how his life ends up. I guess I deserve it. He definitely didn't always make the best decisions in our relationship as well, but I feel I started doing it first more often. Story 40. Not ending an 8-year relationship earlier. I think around the 5-year mark, It became clear we were really not in agreement about the long-term stuff, from the lighter things like marriage all the way to the "are we starting a family and building a home together?" parts. That's not to say I hated her. No, quite the opposite. I loved her to bits, but it was then I realized you can completely love someone, but that doesn't mean it's meant to be. Keeping it going longer than it was healthy cost me that friendship, as it all fell apart by the time I had that conversation about parting ways. I lost one of my closest friends in life because I kept thinking, if we hold out, we can get things on the right track again. Or maybe one of us will have a change of heart on some stuff soon. Story 41. Got laid off from my job 6 weeks before my son was born. My biggest fear was starting a family and not being able to support them, and it threw me into the worst depression of my life. I have a long history of depression. I regret waiting 6 months until things got really bad before going to therapy. Starting right away might have saved my marriage.